Welcome back to Bikes, Burpees, and Backhands. This is your host, Dave Matthews, going on a journey in the next 4 parts with Jeremy Fitzpatrick and Michele Thomas Fitzpatrick, who wrote the book Through Deep Waters, chronicling their journey down a dark road when their father, David Fitzpatrick, was taken by a drugged driver several years back. First part of this series is going to be with Jeremy, talking about David and his riding and their safety factors and all the things that go along with cycling, to give you a little bit of a picture. Hope you enjoy this series. You can get her book on Amazon while you're there. You can also use smile.amazon.com and pick Bike Friendly ATL as your organization that you would like to support. Please do so. A small portion of all your Amazon purchases will go back to Bike Friendly, and that will help us keep this going. Hope you enjoy this podcast, and there are thousands of others, and we appreciate you listening in. Welcome back to Bikes, Burpees, and Backhands. This is your host, Dave Matthews. I guess it had to come around. I'm glad that this young lady decided to do it. Her and her husband placed a ghost bike several years back for a gentleman up in Brazelton, Mr. David Fitzpatrick. It was during one of the worst 14-day segments that I think I've ever lived through, and I can only imagine the recipients and their families of these ghost bikes and what they went through. But for me and my family, who nearly living through it 8 years ago, for some reason, God gave me another chance, and I'm going to try and make sure that that doesn't go by the wayside as a unused opportunity. God doesn't give you, gives you plenty, but what you decide to do with them, to me, is up to each and every individual to make themselves and people around them better, or just let it pass by, and maybe he'll knock on your door again. And he has for me many a times in my life, and I am not letting this one go by. Today on Bikes, Burpees, and Backhands, I've got Michele Fitzpatrick Thomas. She's written a book dealing with the ordeal, the tragedy, however you want to phrase it, of losing her father, who was cycling in Brazelton, was hit from the rear. We'll go into those details, and if that's what we want to do later on. I've got Michele on the podcast with us, and also Jeremy. Jeremy was one of David's cycling friends, got him into cycling, and I want to say first and foremost, thank you, Michele, for being here.
Yes, thank you.
I know this is not an easy thing to talk about, but thank goodness for me, and hopefully a lot of our followers out there, you have put this into a, I guess a Kindle version, a paperback version, and hopefully they can live and learn from it. Anything you want to start before I jump over to Jeremy?
I just thank you for having me. I thank you for bringing attention to this issue and all that you do, for cyclists and pedestrians, and to help make the world a safer place. You're a blessing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Jeremy, why don't you jump in real quick and tell us, I guess the history of you and David, and how y'all got started cycling, your safety concerns, things like that, and get our readers or our followers up to speed on David and his cycling endeavors.
Yeah, well, I was a road cyclist long before Dad was, and in a constant battle to struggle with his weight and health. That was something he brought up to me to maybe give a try, and it's not that I doubted his commitment to that, but we actually started off with a 7-speed cruiser bike to get him into it, and I can vividly remember helping him pick it out online, and then going to a bike shop in Athens and ordering it and his excitement getting out on just in the neighborhood at that point. And he fell in love with it so quickly that within a couple of months, he upgraded to like a flat barred 700C wheeled hybrid bike.
Sure.
So that's when we actually started riding together on the road some. And I can very clearly remember a ride we did just outside of Athens on old 129 out there that paralleled the current 4-lane 129. And he was so upset because the gearing on that bike was geared to people that weren't necessarily interested in being a speed demon, and he couldn't keep up with me simply because he ran out of gears. He
Sure.
couldn't keep up. And so before I knew it, he had ordered a genuine road bike with, it was the real deal. He was an Ultegra level road bike at that point, and he was off and running. So dad loved to bargain, but he also loved to have cool stuff. So he would wait until he saw a clearance, and he'd buy city brand shoes
Sure.
that he found clearance in his size. Of course, from a safety standpoint, we were always aware that there's some inherent risk in being on a bicycle on the road, and both of us, and he kind of inherited this from me, and my philosophy was, be loud, be bright, be visible.
Sure.
He always rode with a super bright tail light. From time to time, depending on his finding the different ones that would seem to work, he would use a mirror. Obviously, you can't plan for everything.
Sure.
We know that clearly, but he loved it. I told Michele the other day when we were talking about it that he didn't dive headfirst into it. He climbed up on top of that high dive board and did a cannonball into cycling. He would text me and reference some obscure race in Europe that wasn't a big deal. And say, hey, did you see what so and so just did? It's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's not a Grand Tour. I'm not watching that. So so it was truly, we talk about our hobbies and things like that being passions, and it was truly a passion for him. And despite the tragic way his life ended, I know that the last few years of his life were drastically better, both from an enjoyment standpoint, but also from a health standpoint, because I can remember, from the time I was a little kid, that was the first athletic or fitness thing that ever stuck. And that was a good solid 5-6 years that from when he took it up until he was taken away from us. So
Sure.
So it was, he loved it. He loved every minute of it.
Absolutely. I think a lot as we're chuckling about the races in Europe that are going on right now. Decatur has one of our own, Joey Roscoff, who's going to be riding in the Tour de France this year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
His team is not even racing right now. They're up in the Alps training, and it's absolutely true. Once you pick up that bicycle and you get a little bit into it, it is it's all encompassing. It really is. I was like, my wife says, why are you still riding? And I say, well, it's my psychology. It's my mental release also, not only physical, but mental, to where it's a good addiction. It really is. I hope that one day, Bike Friendly and Pass Them Like You Love Them and Georgia Bikes and Bike Law and all these associations, hopefully we can make some dents and pathways. I'm seeing people on scooters and people on these e-bikes now, which are coming. I don't think there's any way we can stop it.
Right.
I think we have to be a little more cautious, as a whole society's, awareness gets raised.
And I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's not just about those of us that jump in Lycra and go for our fun rides. I mean, perfect example. I live down in Southwest Atlanta, and although you occasionally sometimes see somebody who's on a road bike and out for recreation, I mean, I see tons of people on Walmart bikes, because that's the only way they have to get to the bus stop. That's the only way they have to get to the store. And they may not be wearing Lycra and they may not be watching the Tour on TV, but they're cyclists and they're more importantly, they're human beings. And I think, you know, that's their safety and their well-being is as important as anybody else's. So I'm with you that I would love to see a sea change in the way that people are viewed that aren't necessarily in cars, you know, that are sharing the road with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What are the things that you and David would do? You know, I'm just trying to get our listeners and followers and YouTubers to have a little empathy, sympathy,
right,
however you want to phrase it. You know, cyclists usually go a little bit above and beyond to be more safe.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, Dad had and he and I both generally had some of the same gear. So Dad would have, I don't even know if they make these anymore, but it was a Planet Bike tail light that had a huge strobe LED and then
right,
several smaller LEDs. So I mean, it was the biggest and brightest that you could get at the time. So and in addition to that, everything would have reflective accents on it. You know, he didn't ride it all black. It was always in bright colors and super visible. And he put reflective stickers on his helmet so that he would be as visible as possible. Of course, you know, all that said, he didn't ride in the dark or anything like that. It wasn't an early morning sunrise kind of thing or a dusk ride or anything like that. And for the most part, always stuck to lightly traveled, you know,
roads,
rural country roads.
Sure.
And you know, when you talk about changing the philosophy of how motorists view not just cyclists but people that are on foot too, you know, just like everybody else, he and I both, when we were together and also separately, experienced people that would kind of swerve aggressively or honk at us, or, you know, sometimes throw bottles out the window, you know, soda bottle, stuff like that. So, you know, it's the attitude is that cyclists are you know, typically expendable and not deserving of the use of the roads.
Sure, I agree. I totally agree. I'm just trying to think, you know, I see, I mean, I do ride in the early morning. To me, I have a group right here in Decatur that rides very early where I'm up right now. This is about the only time of year where we get to do the whole ride in the daylight because it is daylight at like 6.
Right.
We start at 6. We're through by about 7:15, and it's around this east side of Atlanta kind of a ride. But we all have, if not one, maybe 2 or 3 rear lights that are flashing all the time. We get in a group. We always turn them on solid so that somebody following us in the group doesn't get blinded by that continually flashing light. But there's still a red light back there for a motorist who's coming up to see us. I have started riding since it wasn't an accident, my crash, and that's another thing that I really harp on a lot when I hear people say, oh, well, they were in an accident and this was I said, it's not an accident, it's a crash. An accident is two events that occur simultaneously that couldn't have been prevented. If you could try to get them together again, you never could. That's an accident. A crash could have been prevented. And in my 69 ghost bikes that I've done, I really, and the thing that really irritates me about a lot of my fallen friends is that these are people that have had drug or alcohol related driving problems, and we are not doing enough to get them off the road or get them rehab. If you want to say, let's get them rehab, okay, let's get them rehab. But let's get them off the road while they're rehabbing instead of letting them have a relapse. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, and that's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about and talking to friends and family about it. You know, it's not a matter of, so Bill Bowers is the name of the person that killed Dad.
Sure.
And it's not about Bill Bowers needed rehab in 2015. Bill Bowers needed rehab 20 or 30 years ago.
Right.
He needed someone, whether it was friends and family or the government or somebody, to take his addiction seriously before he was set on the path that ended tragically on May 4th, 2015. And you know, I can't help but think if we had treated that as a genuine problem as opposed to a symptom that needs to be punished by jail time. I mean, sure, if somebody commits a crime, then they need to be punished for it. But but nothing was ever done to get to the root cause of why he was committing crimes.
Right.
And if we as a society had taken that and would take that more seriously today, and really treat that as a total, spiritually and physically and you name it, and try to help people heal instead of just punishing them, with no thought for future behavior. I have to think maybe something would have been different.
Absolutely.
I think, absolutely there's a point at which a person who has been a habitual offender is a danger to society, and no longer gets to have the rights to be able to have the freedoms and walk around amongst us the way that we would expect. But before somebody gets to that point, we need to address all the issues, not just the criminal behavior, to try to prevent tragedies and the types of situations that we're in now.
Right. Jeremy, you got anything else you want to add before I kind of get through this cycling part of the segment and get into Michelle's book?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to add one other thing, and this
Sure.
is it's anecdotal. I don't have evidence for this, but I think one of the biggest changes, and it's an education, it's an awareness thing, not for the public at large.
If you're looking for ways to help Bike Friendly Atlanta's cause, you can use your Kroger Rewards Plus card. Go to the Community Rewards online and choose Bike Friendly ATL. You can also use smile.amazon.com every time you order through Amazon, and a small portion of all your grocery and online purchases will come back to Bike Friendly Atlanta, where 100% of your donations goes to the cause. You can also go straight to Bike Friendly ATL, Inc. on Facebook and bikefriendlyatl.org and click on the donation buttons and proceed from there. We appreciate your interest and donations and hope to get our streets safer in our fallen friends' honor very soon. Thanks for tuning in to this first of 4-part series with Jeremy Fitzpatrick, who just told us about the cycling endeavors with his father. There were a few more things that got cut off, but we will definitely make sure we get those back on. Stay tuned for 3 more parts with Michele Fitzpatrick talking about her book, Through Deep Waters. And we thank you again for tuning into Bikes, Burpees, and Backhands, and hope to see you soon.